Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm back with another video for you this week. This week, I want to chat a little bit about the topic that's come up twice from two people. They've asked me. There's been a lot of chat recently about um, whether zone two or very easy cardio is necessary for females. So there's um, a recent blog post that's been circulating on whether females really need to be doing zone two cardio. And for those of you not familiar, zone two cardio is just in kind of the basic terms, a very easy type of cardio. So think of something that you could probably do for a very long time. It doesn't take a lot of effort, doesn't feel very taxing. You could do it maybe while holding a conversation, is something like that people like to say. Basically, it's very easy type of cardio, and I've talked a lot about it. I've written a lot about zone two cardio and its benefits. I'm a huge proponent of zone two cardio, but one of the benefits that zone two cardio has is your ability to metabolize fat. It improves your ability to metabolize fat. So when you exercise or when you move your body or really do anything, your body needs a fuel to do that, and it's either going to use fat or carbs to do it. And generally, this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but in general, the easier the exercise is, the more fat it uses. But the harder the exercise becomes, the more carbohydrates you'll use. So if you imagine kind of a graph where you're constantly increasing the intensity at which you're exercising, and on that graph you have a line for the amount of fat you are using and the amount of carbs you are using when the exercise is really low. So if you're just standing or resting or sitting, you're going to be using a large amount of fat. And as you start to move around, maybe you walk, that amount of fat is going to go down. The carb utilization is going to go up, but still fat will be predominant. And then eventually you get to something where you're kind of working pretty hard. And your carb utilization, the amount of fuel you're getting from carbs is going to take over. It's going to be more than what you're getting from fat. Eventually, as you go all out, you'll almost be using 100% carbohydrate and almost 0% fat. So that's kind of how the body works in very simplified terms, right? It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's just good enough for this explanation. And so one of the ways to, so one of the problems that we see with in individuals who don't do a lot of exercise, maybe have poor diet, poor sleep, just poor lifestyle habits in general, we'll start to use that. We'll start to see that carbohydrate and fat utilization kind of graph that I just described gets a little skewed, right? And it gets skewed more towards the carbohydrate side, meaning you might be sitting down, not doing any exercise at all, and be burning a lot of carbs and almost no fat. And that's like the most extreme example, but we can start to see the carb fat utilization kind of get flipped on its head. And alongside that tends to come along with a lot of chronic diseases and medical conditions and stuff like that. So one of the ways that you can improve your body's ability to utilize fat, if you find yourself in that compromised state, is to do a lot of low level, easy zone two type of exercise. And so with that said, there's some data that shows that females are better at utilizing fat, just regardless of trying to train that metabolic pathway. So without doing any kind of exercise to bias the utilization of fat, females tend to be better at it. And so one could make the argument that females do not need to do as much zone two exercise as males do. And a lot of the recommendations that we have been hearing about over the past few months around exercise and the type of exercise you should be including in your exercise routine is to get a fair amount of zone 2 exercise. Now, I will state universally, I don't think that everyone needs to be doing 2 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours of zone 2 exercise, because honestly, when I work with clients in the real world, um, you know, the number one constraint that everyone has is time. And so when you have to do some type of cardio, you have to do some type of high intensity cardio, then you have to do a couple days of strength training. You're quickly running out of time for people to exercise. And if they have to do 5 hours of zone 2 cardio, or they're supposed to do 5 hours of zone 2 cardio a week, that pretty much takes up all their exercise time. And they have nothing left over for any other type of exercise. So it's just not realistic. So regardless, universally, I don't particularly agree with the people that say you need to be doing large amounts of zone 2 cardio, um, because I don't think that that's necessary. And I think we have to be realistic to ourselves and look at the amount of time we have and the cost benefit analysis of doing zone 2 cardio versus doing other types of cardio, high intensity cardio, as well as strength training, which are all going to be important for your overall health. So that said, you know, I don't care if you're male, female, or whatever. I don't think you need to be doing massive amounts of zone 2 cardio. Um, Now, could it be that females are better at metabolizing fat and probably need less zone 2 cardio than males do? Yes, I'm certainly open to that possibility. I haven't read the research in that area myself. I do know that females tend to be better endurance athletes, so which means that endurance exercise generally uses more fat, anyways. And so we see as the longer the duration of the exercise goes, the smaller the performance differences between males and females. So I could see how that could be possible. I also can see how, from an ancestral model of looking at things, that females were probably doing more of the easier, not to say that their job was easier, but like their lower intensity activities, um, hundreds of thousands of years ago. They were doing the gathering, taking care of the children. I mean, these were all critical activities for the tribe, but they weren't. They were more endurance type of activities. So again, utilizing fat would have been um, more beneficial to them. Whereas for males who might be doing more of the heavy lifting, hunting type of activities, they might be less reliant on fat. And so there could just be evolutionary differences in just division of labor ancestrally that biased females towards better fat utilization. So I'm certainly open to that possibility, and that could certainly be true. However, we have to look at us as the individual and not necessarily broad recommendations across the board for the population. So, what I mean by that is that when I work with a client, a new client, a female client or a male client, doesn't matter who you are, I put them through a set of assessments to assess where they are in various aspects of health. So we obviously take a look at diet, we take a look at their sleep, we take a look at your stress, we take a look at how much walking you're doing, and then we take a look at something like your uh, aerobic fat utilization capability, your high intensity glycolytic carb utilization capability, and we take a look at your strength and endurance. And um, my recommendations uh, after going through those assessments are purely based on those assessments and not necessarily based on the sex of the person. So I'm not going to automatically assume because I'm working with a female that she's going to be she doesn't really need to work on her aerobic system because females are just universally good at utilizing fat and she doesn't need to improve that. And I'm not going to assume that a male is universally good at high intensity exercise because they're maybe better at utilizing carbs. What I do is I look at the data from the assessments and decide, what does the data tell me? Does the data tell me that they probably have some limitations in their fat utilization? Does data tell me that they have some utilizations in their carb utilization? Does data tell me that they could probably make some improvements strength wise? Does data tell me that they are eating too many carbohydrates or too little carbohydrates? So I look at what the data says and then make decisions on how to move forward based on that. Now, it may be that if we had a female and a male, and I was working with, and they both had limitations in their ability to use fat, that I started doing zone two work, and we saw that the female um, showed greater improvements in her fat utilization than the male, just purely based on sex differences, and that females tend to respond better and use fat more frequently than males do, and that's great. That's but what's going to happen is we'll see is that the next time we go through those assessments after 6 to 8 weeks of zone two cardio, for example, that the female made drastic improvements, and maybe we can back off on the zone two cardio now that she's made drastic improvements, whereas the male might need to keep going. Again, so I just repeat the assessment and look at the data and see what the data is telling me, and not just go based on the research, basically, right? I go on what the data is telling me from the individual that I'm working with. Um, and so it's certainly possible that females are better at this, but we have to look at where you're at, as an individual, right? If you're getting winded walking up a flight of stairs, if you're the thought of going for a long hike sends shivers down your spine. If the thought of if you can't um, work through a strength training session without taking 3-minute rest breaks. All these things are signs that you're probably aerobically deficient, and that you need to spend a little bit of time doing zone two exercise, easy aerobic exercise. And that's just, I don't care if you're male, female, or something else, like that's just the way you should assess yourself. Um, I think it's important to take into consideration that there might be sex differences, and you might see it might explain quicker improvements in fat metabolism in females than in males, but it doesn't mean that you can just forego easy aerobic exercise because you're a female. So I think that I encourage you all to basically look at yourself as an individual, assess where you are at, what you need to improve. It might be that you're a female and that you really have a terrible aerobic base, and you need to be doing a lot of zone two because you don't have the fat utilization capabilities, and so that zone two is going to be quite beneficial to you. But it might be that you're pretty good on that side, but you really stink at the high intensity strength training side of things. And that's cool too. So you can just put zone two on maintenance and do it, 1 day a week or whatever, and work on the other things. And that's fine too, right? But we have to look at ourselves as the individual. We have to assess where we are at, uh, uh, without taking in broad recommendations, and then move forward with a plan that allows us to customize what we're going to do based on where we are currently at and where we want to go and where our goals are. And that's really what coaching is all about. I love research. I love looking at the science. I love knowing the mechanism behind things, but I always keep in mind that that applies to a broad spectrum of people, and that it doesn't necessarily apply to the individual that I'm working with. And that I need to customize the way I'm working with that person to fit that individual's needs. And so, yeah, the research might say one thing, but when you're working with an individual person and trying to get them to reach their individual goals, that might not apply to them. It might not be, they might do the complete opposite, right? Research is all based on averages. And that means there's people that fit within that average, and there's people that fall within outside that average. Doesn't mean that it applies to everyone universally. So we have to keep that in mind. And no one person is usually average. They're usually not average, actually. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that maybe clears the air a little bit on how to tackle these types of things. And when we talk about sex differences, whether it's male or female or zone two or strength training or diet related, and I hope it encourages everyone to do a little bit more research, and just let the research kind of guide you and maybe some first steps on how to do that research. With that said, if you like the content that I'm putting out, please subscribe to my newsletter. You can scan that QR code in the upper corner of the video here, or you can go to rjbhealth.coach, click on the newsletter tab at the top, and enter your email address and subscribe to the newsletter. If you would like to do one-on-one coaching, like I talked about here, I don't have any spots available at the moment, but we can put you on the waiting list. So if you go to my website, rjbhealth.coach, click on the schedule discovery call button on the homepage, and you can fill out that form, and I will email you. We can chat a little bit about what you're looking to do and get you on a wait list for next time I have a spot open to work with me. But if you have any questions or comments on what we talked about today, please just leave them in the comments below. Direct message me. I'm happy to chat a little bit more. Give me your thoughts on sex differences, whether it's zone two or something else. With that, I'll talk to you all next week. I hope you have a great week.